Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to be unpacking the truly perplexing facts and the rigorous process of elimination used by investigators behind one of China's most shocking aviation disasters.
Let's drive right into this timeline, because it shows how a completely routine 2-hour passenger flight to Guangzhou suddenly turned into a catastrophic and honestly inexplicable anomaly. On March 21, 2022, flight MU-5735 took off from Kunming at exactly 1:11 p.m., and for about an hour and 10 minutes, everything was proceeding perfectly. The aircraft was cruising normally at a steady altitude of 29,000 feet. But then, at exactly 2:20 p.m., the situation violently shifted. The plane began a sudden, rapid, and severe vertical descent, plummeting straight toward the ground.
Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. If a standard technical issue or an engine problem occurs, commercial airplanes are specifically designed to safely glide downward. During a normal emergency descent, a plane will come down at a speed of a few thousand feet per minute. But flight MU-5735 plummeted vertically. It dropped nearly 30,000 feet in an astonishing 1 minute and 35 seconds. To put that into perspective, that's literally the speed at which a skydiver in freefall descends. It is absolutely not how a large passenger jet behaves.
So, moving on to our first main section, searching for answers by examining the flight data. Let's see what the numbers tell us. If we look closely at the track of the descent on the Flight Radar 24 data, you'll spot something incredibly strange. If you follow that terrifying steep drop, right around an altitude of 8,000 feet, there's a sudden, bizarre anomaly. The plane briefly regains some altitude before it starts plummeting all over again. And this single blip in the data raises deep, really unsettling questions for investigators. I mean, was the pilot, or maybe someone else in the cockpit, momentarily fighting with everything they had to regain control of the aircraft? Well, our very first step in the investigative process of elimination is looking at the environment. And at 2 p.m., conditions were absolutely normal. The temperature was 30 degrees Celsius, winds were moderate, visibility was excellent, we're talking over 10 miles, and there had been 0 rain prior to the crash. So looking at this data, we can completely, 100% rule out a weather-related accident. But finding the physical answers on the ground, that proved incredibly difficult for rescue teams. They had to navigate some seriously challenging steps just to recover one of the supposedly crash-proof black boxes. First off, they had to push through treacherous hills and a thick forest just to locate the wreckage. Then, kind of ironically, heavy rainfall, which hadn't been an issue at all during the flight, forced a temporary halt to the search operations. Eventually, though, they successfully recovered one of the black boxes. And while it was heavily damaged on the outside from the extreme impact, it was sent to Beijing, and the internal records are said to be intact.
Next up is Section 2, Expert Consensus, where we start ruling out a simple accident. Aviation expert Neil Hansford's words here really set a chilling tone for the whole investigation. He firmly believes that the chances of this being a standard accident are just remarkably low. He states, if this crash was because of an accident, it would have been an unimaginable accident. Perhaps both wings fell off, or a missile struck the plane. His point is terrifyingly clear, right? Standard technical failures simply do not cause a plane to nosedive vertically.
And history actually shows us exactly why experts feel this way. Take Air France Flight 447, which tragically crashed into the ocean back in 2009. In that disaster, the pilots were highly confused by severe technical problems and faulty sensors. But even during that absolute worst-case scenario, the plane descended slowly. It was nothing at all like flight MU-5735, where video footage caught the plane taking a sheer vertical nosedive, literally falling like a rock out of the sky.
So that crucial point is heavily reinforced by U.S. federal aviation investigator Michael Daniel. Looking at the physics of the descent and the radar data, he concluded that this horrific plunge was most likely foul play. In his expert opinion, someone did this intentionally.
Now, there are extremely rare historical precedents for a vertical nosedive of this nature. Take Silk Air Flight 185, which crashed near Sumatra, Indonesia back in 1997, and Egypt Air Flight 990, which crashed into the Atlantic Ocean in 1999. In both of these incredibly rare and tragic historical cases, the final consensus was the exact same. The planes were intentionally crashed by the pilot.
Let's move on to Section 3, the Boeing 737 question, addressing the aircraft model itself.
Before we fully accept the foul play theory, we really have to investigate the elephant in the room. In the immediate aftermath of this crash, a lot of people assumed the culprit was Boeing's MCAS software. You can see it defined here as the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System.
Essentially, this was special software installed to fix aerodynamic problems created when Boeing shifted the engines forward on their newer designs. In 2018 and 2019, faulty sensors activated this software by mistake, forcing the nose of those planes down and causing fatal crashes. The fallout was massive, ultimately resulting in the U.S. Department of Justice finding that Boeing defrauded the government, forcing them to pay a $2.5 billion fine. However, we need to clear up a major public assumption by comparing the actual plane models. The aircraft involved in those tragic 2018 and 2019 crashes was the Boeing 737 MAX. That's a newer model equipped with that flawed MCAS software. Flight MU-5735, on the other hand, was not a MAX. It was a Boeing 737-800. This is an older, incredibly reliable plane model that has been used safely for years, and importantly, it does not have the MCAS system. So this definitively rules out this notorious software glitch as the cause of our crash.
Which brings us to Section 4, Foul Play and Theories, and how we process an unexplained disaster.
By systematically eliminating the weather, the MCAS software glitch, and standard technical failures, experts are led to a really dark conclusion. After analyzing all the available explanations, investigators firmly believe the most likely scenario is that the pilot or someone who violently took over control from the pilot crashed the plane intentionally. The actual motive, however, remains a terrifying mystery locked away in those damaged black boxes.
You know, when disasters lack immediate explanations, human nature desperately tries to fill the void. Without clear answers, wild conspiracy theories immediately surged across Chinese social media. One of the most popular and entirely unfounded theories actually blamed America, suggesting the U.S. caused the crash because China didn't take a clear stand in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And while that's completely disconnected from the aviation data, it highlights a very common human response to trauma. We instinctively build complex narratives when we're starved for clear-cut answers.
Finally, let's look at Section 5. Is flying still safe? We'll look at the actual data behind modern aviation. Now, examining the grim realities of intentional crashes, conspiracy theories, and unexplained nosedives might understandably leave you terrified of flying, but let's take a deep breath and look at the actual safety data. I want you to focus on this exact number for a second, 0.07. Statistically speaking, this represents the incredibly negligible amount of crashes per 1 million flights for the Boeing 737, 600, 700, 800, and 900 aircraft family. Out of 1 million flights taking to the skies, only a tiny fraction of a single percent result in a crash. And when we compare that to other historical aircraft models, this fraction provides incredible, data-driven reassurance. The Airbus A300 sits at 0.46 crashes per million flights, and the Airbus A310 is at 1.35. The Boeing 737-800 family's rate of 0.07 proves that modern commercial air travel remains one of the absolute safest modes of transportation on the planet. Today, crashes due to bad weather or standard mechanical failures have little to almost no chance of happening.
But of course, that incredible safety record brings us right back to the chilling anomaly of this particular disaster. We have the data-driven reassurance, and we have systematically ruled out the weather, the mechanics, and the aircraft model itself. But as an investigative observer, you're still left to ponder this one haunting question. The black box data being extracted in Beijing may eventually shed light on those terrifying final seconds. But until then, what truly happened in the cockpit of flight MU-5735 to cause a plane to fall from the sky like a rock?